there's a budget crisis, and it costs money to do what was done. Some of the things that contributed to his success was what? A small school, dedicated instructors and administrative staff that fostered a sense of safety for him. He felt seen, known, and that led to him feeling a deep sense of belonging. And as a result, that put him on a path of learning and growth. To achieve something like that, it requires resources, it requires investment, which I believe our district has done historically, given how we've been pouring into special education. But there's a deficit. And so, to contextualize what I'm going to share with us tonight, I want to share a saying that a mentor of mine told me years ago. He said, "Parfait, you know what? There's nothing like hot water to reveal the flavor in a tea bag." All right? And he used that analogy to make the point that stressful situations, crisis, have a way of bringing about character, or the things that are most important in people, what they value. Well, as a community, we've been put through the hot boiling water of a financial crisis with the school district. And we've experienced a number of emotions, such as shock, right? Disappointment, frustration, fear, hurt, anger, disappointment, did I say that? Anxiety, to name a few. Yet, as I look at our community within the last year or so, one thing that's been consistent, and I would argue is the tea leaves in our collective tea bag, has been care and hope. We've shown how much we care about our children, we've shown how much we care about each other, and we kept showing up at board meetings, we kept showing up at the legislature to testify. We kept sending emails in advocacy. We sat across tables with people we may disagree with in order to discuss solutions, because we are committed to doing right by our children and finding the right solution. And that's why we're here tonight, because we want to find the right solution and do right by our children. Is that correct? So, that leads me to my last point. How do we do right by our children? And how do we do the right thing and find the right solution? So I would like to offer, as humbly as I can, 4 guiding principles that I think if we were to think of those tonight as we speak and as we listen to what's being shared, it may help us. And what led me to really think about these 4 guiding principles was a conversation I had with my son the evening after he shared at the board meeting. On our way back home in the car, I was telling him how proud I was as a dad that he stepped out in public, advocated, told his story in order to try to change the course of what was going on. And his first response was, "Would it matter?" And I paused. That a 10-year-old was already filled with cynicism about whether his voice mattered, whether his experience was compelling enough to move the needle. And I told him, as best as I could, that it mattered because he showed up, he told his story, and as long as there's life, there's hope. So here are 4 principles I would like to offer us to hopefully remember tonight. The first one is remembering who this is about. It's about our children. They're watching us, and they're counting on us. The second principle is that we need to be honest and truthful with ourselves, with others, and with our intentions. It's hard or nearly impossible to have breakthroughs in deceit or in error. Third principle, we need to remember that there are no enemies. There are no enemies. We all care about our community and want the best for our community. But we come at it based on who we are, what we know, and our limitations. So as we exchange and share ideas, let's remember that we are fellow community members wanting to do the best thing, and let's humanize each other in the process. And the last comment, the last principle is this. I had a note. Here it is. Let's speak with conviction and let's speak with boldness our convictions and hold them with an open hand as well. Because it requires humility, no matter where we at. Humility to hear the perspectives across the table to inform where we're coming from. Because we all have strengths and gaps. But without humility, we cannot hear each other. So I hope as we spend this time together tonight, as people come and speak, that we be filled with some of this, guided by some of these principles. And as we listen and hear, that we hear it through those principles. Thank you.
I want to start first by thanking the Olympia Film Society and Capitol Theater for hosting us this evening. Can we get a big round of applause? We're here to discuss solutions to an anticipated $3.5 million shortfall projected for August 2025. The school district has to present a balanced budget this summer, even though that projection is out in August 2025. School board directors have stated that this is not something that we can cure other than through school consolidation, unless the public is willing to cut into programs and services. When we heard that as a community last December, last November, October, September, August, we started to wonder who else around us was concerned with this narrative. And why weren't we seeing other solutions come to the table? So a group of us got together, tired of the process of pitting schools against each other. I remember when LP Brown was on all 4 scenarios, and I kept thinking, actually, the condition of our school is really good. Not in comparison to other schools in the district, but from an equity standpoint, we have what we need. And what I found, as I looked around, is that others felt the same way. They're tired of this pitting schools against each other. And so we formed together to join OSDForAll. If you've been involved in OSDForAll, will you please stand up? And if everybody will give a round of applause to these amazing individuals and volunteers. Thanking the Olympia Film Society and Capitol Theater for hosting us this evening. Can we get a big round of applause? We're here to discuss solutions to an anticipated $3.5 million shortfall projected for August 2025. The school district has to present a balanced budget this summer, even though that projection is out in August 2025. School board directors have stated that this is not something that we can cure other than through school consolidation, unless the public is willing to cut into programs and services. When we heard that as a community last December, last November, October, September, August, we started to wonder who else around us was concerned with this narrative. And why weren't we seeing other solutions come to the table? So a group of us got together, tired of the process of pitting schools against each other. I remember when LP Brown was on all 4 scenarios, and I kept thinking, actually, the condition of our school is really good, not in comparison to other schools in the district, but from an equity standpoint, we have what we need. And what I found, as I looked around, is that others felt the same way. They're tired of this pitting schools against each other. And so we formed together to join OSDForAll. If you've been involved in OSDForAll, will you please stand up? And if everybody will give a round of applause to these amazing individuals and volunteers. To develop and propose solutions to this crisis. As Parfait said, the $3.5 million budget deficit is real. That is a real number. What you are going to see here this evening, though, are near-term solutions to fix that deficit. That's what's so exciting about this group coming together. Now, on December 7th, 9 PTAs, PTOs, PTSOs, and other student groups from 9 schools endorsed a letter to the OSD School Board and Superintendent asking for the following, and I just want to read a couple of paragraphs from that. We request that on December 14th, the OSD School Board make a public announcement that the OSD will not be pursuing school closures for the 2024-2025 school year, opting instead for a broader assessment of options to address the budget deficit that will be vetted through significant public engagement. Done before. 9 PTAs, PTOs, PTSOs, community groups coming together, aligned around language in one letter. That request was ignored. There was no response to that request. Instead, on December 14th, the proposal was put forth by Director Scott Cliffthorne to consider closing Madison and Margaret McKinney Elementary Schools and was approved with 3 directors voting in the affirmative, with Directors Flores and Turtelot Palumbo, voting against the proposal. Since December 14th, 4 additional PTAs, PTOs, PTSOs have endorsed the December 7th letter. Still, the requests from 13 have gone ignored. But tonight, we're going to set the record straight. That's what this evening is all about. There are so many people in this room that have been working nights, weekends, 24/7, around the clock, to look at budgets, to look at grants, to look at the legislative options. What we know is that we can keep all schools open. We don't have to cut programs and services. And we can deliver a balanced budget this year. Tonight is not about pie-in-the-sky ideas or unicorn dreams. Tonight is about practical solutions that will deliver real savings. And I want to show you what we're talking about with savings. And this budget deficit. Here in this bucket, we have 178 balls. And yet, the budget deficit only represents McKinney and Madison. That's very small. Together, we can solve this. And we're going to show you tonight how to make it happen. The question is whether the OSD school board directors, and thank you to Director Cliffthorne and Director Turtelot Palumbo for being here with us this evening. Thank you very much. So the question is whether the school board directors and Superintendent Murphy have the will to do what Parfait has asked us to do. To sit at the table and to listen with honesty, with open ears, to what this community here and those who couldn't be here this evening are offering, and to do the right thing by balancing the budget and not blaming our small schools for the budget deficit. So thank you everyone for being here tonight, and let's go ahead and get this started with our first
another one starting in the fall. I got involved just this last December when I started to look at the enrollment prediction. I want to give a brief history. So the school district, year after year, experienced increased enrollments for 7 years leading up to COVID. A 2015 report put together by Educational Data Solutions accurately predicted this. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and then we lost students, a lot of students, and it was a shock to the system, and it meant a lot less revenue for the school district. But Educational Data Solutions was hired again, and they made a report in January 2021 and said, don't worry about it. It'll all come back, we'll bounce back, and enrollment will continue to climb. And they put in a report, quote, the quick recovery over the summer speaks to the resilience of the broader economy, end quote. And, quote, demand for housing in the county remains strong, end quote. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and enrollment continued to decline. So last spring, in 2023, they hired a different prediction enrollment company called Flow Analytics. At the same time, they hired Western Demographics to help them consolidate schools. So tonight, I want to talk about what that prediction enrollment report says. With me is Amber Siefer. Amber, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what the report says?
Sure can. Thank you, Heidi. You guys hear me okay? Good evening, everybody. I'm Amber Siefer. Thank you so much for being here for the discussion. I am also a parent in the district. I have 2 kiddos. I have a 5th grader at Lincoln and an 8th grader at Washington. My background is in anthropology and public administration. So I work in applied and human-centered research. And what that means is putting the community at the center of our thinking, at the center of our data collection, and at the center of the solutions that we develop. And that includes social and economic modeling. So, in other words, how we measure and predict change. So to answer your question, Heidi, the current analysis tells us that the enrollment will decline every year into the foreseeable future at about 100 students per year. So the data in the report shows us a new normal of enrollment decline. And in 2020, the district lost 421 students. However, in the fall of 23, we only lost 26 students.
So we're still losing enrollment, but not as much as they anticipated.
Correct. So to put this in perspective, it's helpful to look at the rate of growth in enrollment before COVID and then the percentage decline following COVID. So I'm going to advance this or attempt to. Oh, thank you. So this graph behind me shows the yearly rate of growth for the 10 years before COVID, which it turns out is about an average of 1% per year. And then the percentage decline following COVID, there was a steep drop. You can see a 4% in 2020. But that decline has reduced significantly in 2023 at 0.3%. So what this means when I look at this is that we experienced a significant setback during COVID, and we could begin to recover.
Both Flow and Western Demographics say birth rates are dropping, and that is the reason for the reduction in enrollment. However, EDS, the Educational Data Solutions that they hired twice, acknowledges birth rates are dropping in both his 2015 and 2021 report. But this does not result in enrollment decline. So what's going on?
So birth rates have been steadily declining locally for decades. However, in this district, in-migration of families has been a really strong driver of our steady enrollment growth. So what is driving the prediction? The current prediction is the view that families will move here as much as they did in the past. And the reasons that are given for that are that there is less affordable single-family housing, and we are building more multifamily housing. And there is a strong assumption that families won't live in multifamily housing.
I'd like to introduce Jesse Simmons. He's the Government Affairs Director at Fora Olympia Master Builders Association. He's our local building expert. And can you comment on the future of multi-housing development here in Olympia?
Sure, Heidi. Thank you for inviting me, by the way. I don't know that I would call myself an expert, but I am familiar with the trends in the local building industry and what's really happening around here in our community. What we're seeing is the opposite of a slowdown in the building industry. Of course, you have your seasonal lows and highs. So yes, right now we're at a low period in the building industry, but usually by the time the spring and summer come back around, we start seeing an increase again. I want to talk about, I want to dispel the notion that enrollment numbers should be attached to like single family housing. In the past, that was probably true, but I would like to call that a 20th century way of thinking, and we're in the 21st century. And so what we're seeing, and the New York Times has put out a report on this for like priorities of renters and buyers, and what they are also seeing across the country as well as here is that families will actually look for the school, the quality of the school first. And I can attest to that because we did the same thing. I got out of the military in 2014. I had 3 school-age children. We were looking for good schools and a place to live, and we decided to stay here. We wanted good schools first. We looked for that first, and we rented a house in the neighborhood that we ended up buying in. But that is the trend that the New York Times also put out, was that 60 to 70% of the respondents in that survey, in that test, said that that's what they do, is they look for the quality of the school first. And so the logic that school enrollment numbers are tied to single family housing is just kind of no longer true. And so locally, we're seeing, like I say, building is not slowing down. City of Olympia has recently taken a lot of steps to ensure that we meet the demands of that current housing crisis. And if you haven't figured it out yet, we are in a housing crisis. You can look around. From the legislature on down, they're saying, hey, we need more housing. We need 1 million houses by 2045. And so what City of Olympia has done, they have expanded the multifamily tax credits. They've removed minimum parking requirements so they can leave that up to the builder. And they're trying to do everything they can to make it easier to build. And the largest amount of those projects is multifamily housing. And that's what we're seeing going forward in the building industry. It's a huge influx of multifamily housing in the
Thank you for that perspective, Jesse. So Flow Analytics did do an analysis on how many children were living in newly built homes in the school district. And I want to emphasize this is the only housing analysis that Flow did. And they looked at homes built between 2017 and 2021, and they found a really low rate of kids living in these multifamily housing newly built. So I want to ask Amber, why do you think during this time they did not find students living in these newly built multifamily housing?
Yeah, so that's because less families moved during COVID, or for the last 3 years of the 5 years that were measured. Migration was higher for individuals during COVID, but it slowed really significantly for families. The slide behind me shows the positive net migration to the county from 2019 to 2020 at the onset of COVID. And according to the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard, and they looked at really robust data, they looked at USPS address change request data. This early COVID migration nationwide was mostly individuals and not families. So when I look at this, I think it shows that our community was really a safe haven during COVID. And then if we could look at this early migration to the county actually, let me restate that. So this type of migration of individuals slowed significantly between 2020 and 2021, but we can see that it is picking back up again.
what about COVID made it so hard for families to continue to move here?
Some families could afford to move during COVID, but many families were hunkered down because housing, food, and energy costs skyrocketed. Thank you so much. I just want to read this quote from Ben Bernanke, the former chair of the Federal Reserve. So I'm going to crank my neck here. A substantial part of the pandemic-era inflation surprise reflected rapid, largely unanticipated increases in food and energy prices. And we can go to the next slide. So in 2020, prices increased for almost all major categories, and 8.4 million households experienced energy insecurity. And here, this chart shows you that the cost burden increased across all income levels during COVID because of these historically high prices. So these hardships meant that by 2021 we had 1.2 million more children that fell into poverty, more so for Latino children and Black children and female-headed households. And so not surprisingly, increased housing insecurity for youth negatively impacts enrollment. So the type of housing that we build going forward really matters if our community wants to be a safe haven for families of all income levels. And this ties right back to the need for multifamily housing we were talking about, Jesse.
Right, and so do families of all income levels even want to live in Olympia? What is so attractive about Olympia anyways? Jesse, would you like to answer this?
Sure. Well, what we're seeing in the building industry is that there still is a high level of demand at every income level, and that's why we have the mission to build affordable housing at every income level. We have members that are taking on projects for the first time in their careers that are considered low-income projects because, the demand is there and it's growing. I know that you mentioned population projections earlier, and I was going to say that, OFM puts out these population projections, and they're often under the mark from what we're seeing. I read something today online from 2012 that projected that, City of Olympia wouldn't be near 60,000 people by 2045. Lacey wouldn't have over 60,000 people by 20, and we're just, we're seeing that's not true. Lacey's over 60,000, Olympia's getting there. Yes, people are attracted to the area, and I don't know, I guess I can speak personally. For me, it was the great schools, number one. It was location to everything that we wanted to do. You can go to the ocean in a couple hours. You can go to the mountain. It's an attractive area. People will always be attracted to this area. They will always come here. The people are coming, we need the housing, we're building the housing, and we need the schools. So.
Yeah, and there's also a stronger job market now. So strong drivers of family migration are better paying jobs and more affordable housing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's basically what the prediction enrollment paper from EDS in 2021 said, well before we realized all these alterations in migration patterns because of COVID. So, unfortunately, we don't know what Flo thinks about older housing, current migration trends, or future policies. It's completely missing from the report. But if you look at what values they chose for the only two variables affecting total enrollment, they do not think families are going to continue to come to Olympia.
That's right, so that information is missing. So I asked them directly to confirm my understanding. And yes, they did confirm that the current model supports the conclusion that our current housing development, which is weighted more towards multifamily now, will act as a disincentive for families to the point that migration will no longer offset lowering birth rates. And as you stated earlier, they found a small number of students living in newer family housing, but that doesn't take into account the decrease in mobility for families during COVID. And they chose only to include data for their district-wide prediction from 2017 forward, thereby excluding historical family migration patterns. So it's a narrow analysis, and and I welcome their clarification on this, but the unstated assumption really seems to be that family migration won't return to our area because families of greater means don't want to live in multifamily housing.
So I want to talk a little bit about what Flo could have looked at when it comes to housing in particular. I live in an older neighborhood. Most of the homes were built before I was born, and I see a lot of elderly neighbors, but when they leave, they are replaced with families. Amber, could this be something happening all over OSD?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's called generational turnover, and it is missing from the current analysis. So at this point in time, newly sold, at least in our area for now, newly sold single-family homes, regardless of when they are built, are more likely to have a greater number of children residing in them comparatively. Also, multi-generational households and other types of households, we have single parents, we have skip generation households, we have foraged families, all of these are much more prevalent now. So there are different and larger family units beyond the nuclear family model who also raise children and care for their aging parents at home. And the opposite is true. More grandparents are raising their grandchildren nowadays too.
And that makes sense. And again, that was not included in the full report. What about multi-housing of older housing stocks?
So the older multifamily housing stock is not included, although Flo did acknowledge that as multifamily units age, they can have higher rates of families living in them. We know there are local cases where the rates are higher. So for example, in Ashwood Downs Apartments, in the McKinney Elementary catchment, we found a student generation rate that was 3 times higher than what is shown by the current analysis.
Flo also failed to adequately discuss that enrollment drop for 2020. They literally only say in the report, quote, due to impacts of COVID, end quote. What is going on there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. For what it's worth, I did some digging on my own, and there was an increase in private school enrollment, certainly, but that is not the whole picture. There's also been a really meaningful increase in homeschooling. More than district-wide, the increase in homeschooling has more than doubled from 115 families in 2022 to 256 families in 2023. And the total number of students enrolled part-time or with the H-Connect program rose from 255 to 745 students during that same time period. So that's a big jump of 490 students. So there are clearly some opportunities to expand programs for areas of high demand so that our local schools can remain relevant to more families following this public health crisis. In other words, we can put students and families at the center of our thinking and our solutions.
And that's right. In fact, we should be putting students and families at the center of our thinking right now, especially when building an enrollment prediction model. The assumptions made in a model directly affect its output, and it's this output that is driving our thinking and expectations about our local budget and policy solutions. It's driving future expectations about deficits, and it is the key tool being used to figure out which school to consolidate. Nobody here wants to overcrowd our schools because a firm didn't familiarize themselves with our housing, our policies, and our culture, incorrectly predicted that our enrollment would continue to decline for 10 years into the future, after reaching an all-time high status just 4 years ago.
So that's exactly right. So the question remains, Is planning enrollment the new normal? Well, instead, I would suggest that there's a real potential for a rebound in enrollment, but we are not out of the woods quite yet. So if we want to have more confidence in our solutions, we're going to need a model that more broadly represents this community, and it, quite frankly, is in alignment with local building imperatives and our comprehensive planning process.
So we will end our discussion with this quote from the Flow report about its accuracy. It says, enrollment projections and forecasts are expected values based on assessment of current and past data, and as such should be considered as just one of several planning tools rather than absolute numbers for the allocation of future resources. Can you go to the next slide? If you're interested in reading the Flow report, please follow our QR code and then you can click on our website. It will take you directly to the report.
I have a lot of great memories, teachers, and friends at McKinney, and I can't bear to lose that. So please, don't close McKinney. If you close McKinney, I will have to go to 2 new schools in the next 2 years because I'm a 4th grader. I would have to get used to a new elementary, then turn right around and get used to middle school. I made a best friend at McKinney, and we would have to split up next year and send to 2 different schools. I go to school to learn how to solve big problems. Grown-ups got to go to school already, and they need to solve this big problem better. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ari, and I go to McKinney Elementary. And I'm here for a very good reason, and we all need to listen to that reason. We know that saving money is not a joke, and neither is McKinney and Madison closing. I understand that schools cost money, but wait till you see how much money it will cost when you have an uneducated generation. Hello, my name's Miss Meisner. They are what I love about Madison. I know, a 5th grade skater can love teachers. Who would have guessed? I'm and I am a 5th grader for Madison Elementary School. Madison is unique because everyone is always including and nice. When my family is having a hard time, my school showed up to help us. More kids deserve to be as lucky as me, and when I graduate from Columbia High School, I want to come back and do the graduation parade at Madison, not at some school I didn't go to. Duh.
Hi everyone, I'm Josh Atena, parent of both McKinney and Olympia High School student, and want to talk a little bit about budgeting, something near and dear to me. I spend most of my day job doing budgeting, finance, so it's pretty familiar territory. I'll try to go quickly through the slides because I know numbers can get intense and I don't want to keep anyone too long, but I do want to point out some key trends. One thing that should be obvious to you when you look at these three lines is one of the lines is going up and to the right, and the rest are flat to kind of down. And hopefully it's pretty clear what's going on. So, by the way, these dollars are not these are actual millions of dollars, not just hundreds of dollars. So we're talking about a budget and an expense that's gone from 133 million just 5 years ago to 178 million last year, and is projected to go to 185 million next year. I'll get a little bit more into the methodology of how we do budgeting or how the district has done budgeting. But it's interesting, the enrollment, as was just talked about in the past panel, has dropped with some of the COVID shock factor, yet the spending continues to rise. And it's important to understand, yes, the spending has risen, but it's been supported by revenue. So we are actually growing our revenues throughout this period. Even with enrollment declining, revenues have grown. And even next year, we project enrollment revenues to grow, which I'll show you in a moment. And so I think, when you look at this, you look at a pretty flat FTE, staffing base, and a pretty aggressive increase in spending, and you just got to ask, where's all that spending going? It's not going to support more students, it's actually supporting fewer students and the same amount of staff, which means a lot of folks are certainly have increased in terms of their pay, and there's a lot of dollars out there to certainly look at from a budget perspective. Next path, as you can see, revenue, as I mentioned, is tracking with the expenses, so pretty good trends there, and covering really our budget. As enrollment even has dropped, we continue to increase revenue. So what does this all mean? Well, because of the amount of spending we've been seeing, we've actually taken a very aggressive approach to how we forecast and budget that spend. And what you're seeing on this chart is the amount of forecast overage compared to the actual amount of spend. So even as I told you that up and to the right movement was happening, we're going from 133 to 166 million. We've been projecting budgets of 10 to 11 million on average per year above that level of spend. So effectively, we've been over budgeting our spend by approximately $10 million a year. And that was true last year, exactly 10 million. And so one of the challenges when you look at the Olympia School District budget is we're building a significant amount of cushion in the forecast. And then we're talking about deficits on top of that cushion, which raises some questions about the reality of whether those deficits are going to happen or whether they're just designed to get us, forward thinking about cost cutting. And as you can see, we've had, significant surpluses every year in the budget for the last 5 years. This is what we're effectively ending the year with compared to what we thought we would end the year with. This is all cash sitting in the bank, more or less. So pretty clear we had 10 million in the bank last year versus a forecast of just 5. As you can see here, this is just meant to give you a feel for where our spending is going today. As you can see, most of it does go to teaching and learning, as you'd expect. But what's interesting, again, is the gigantic leap we've taken across all of the areas of the budget over the last 5 years. The inner donut of the circle is what we spent in 2018. The outer donut is what we spent last year, or projected to spend this year, I should say. And you can see big jumps across all of the areas, not least of which includes the administration and some of the other support functions. So I wanted to bring up this slide just to put in perspective. We saw the 178 balls drop. And it's interesting because when you talk about savings, what does savings really mean when you close a school? And I think it's important to recognize most of the dollars that you're actually saving are actually walking with the student to the next school, and that is teaching. Most of the savings that are not really savings, that are in the savings number, are teachers. 1.1 million of the 1.8 million that's quoted in the McKinney and Madison closings are actual teachers that have every right to continue their job in whatever school students are moving to. And, thank you. I just don't think it's right to call that savings, so I call it out. I'd also point out, when you look at the FTE counts on the left, when you take out the teachers and learning, and you have to adjust some of this because some are based on hours, there's only approximately 6 FTEs combined between these two schools that are actually being affected. And I think that's important because most of those FTEs are actually covered by the state funding model. I mean, our state has a prototypical size of 400 kids per elementary school. On average, we are running around 320 today. So we are light in terms of enrollment per school, but we're actually running these schools very efficiently today. In fact, we're running them more efficiently than the state has told us to run them. So we're really not creating a lot of efficiency by closing these schools. Yes, we are potentially removing some cost, but from a very well-oiled machine. Thanks. This was supposed to be an animated slide, but I'm just going to kind of hit on the high points real quick. So, I just talked to you about how much we over budget every year. And one thing I forgot to mention about over budgeting is we budget the next year off of last year's budget. And so if we over budgeted last year by 10 million, you can only imagine when we apply an increase to that budget, how much more we're over budgeting. And to give you an example of what some of that over budgeting looks like, we've added $2 million for uncertainty around the market in terms of just what we might have to pay for things that are not known today. We've added $2 million or 10% more for material supplies and other operating costs, roughly 8% of that particular line item, just because there's inflation and we should add that to our budget. And as you know, we have $3.5 million of opportunity or deficit that we're talking about, all of which would be addressed by just that alone, before we even talk about any cuts or any other issues. So I bring that up again. I don't think we actually have to cut anything to hit our budget. So I think that's an important point as we're talking about closing schools that affect hundreds of students. But if we do want to talk about areas we could cut, I think some obvious ones come to mind. Even the superintendent yesterday made a really compelling argument around efficiency within our schools and how can we get more efficient with our existing staff. And he even raised, I think, a great point around how do we manage our attrition. Attrition today, if you assume roughly 5% of our staff, leaves the district every year, that's roughly 50 people per year, and close to $6 million in headcount walks out the door every year. And so do we need to backfill every one of those individuals? Can we find efficiencies in terms of ratios across the district, rebalancing teachers and other support? Absolutely, and I think the superintendent's on board with that, and I would say that should be the number one thing we do before we look at cutting anything. Thank you. And then we can continue going down the list. I mean, the district today overspends relative to the prototypical model by roughly 2%. So the prototypical model says that central administration should be roughly 5% of the staffing of the district. We're running closer to 7% today. Each percent, might I remind you, is worth almost $2 million. I don't need to say more than that. The other area, of course, is non-payroll costs. We spend $25 million annually in the district on non-payroll. And we have, as I said earlier, an 8% inflationary increase built into next year's budget. Is anyone looking at those vendors? Is anyone looking at those suppliers, those costs, and negotiating cost freezes or other ways to mitigate continuous runaway inflation that's far in excess of where the economy is running today? We can continue going down the list. I think there's enough dollars on here, hopefully, to add up to multiple years of the savings that are being broadcast from these couple schools. But one area that gets a lot of attention is the special ed program. And I think one thing we should keep in mind with that program is we are running above the state-funded level, which is 15%. But one of the reasons we run above that level is because, yes, we aren't getting maybe our fair share of the funding, but we're also not moving enough students through the program and achieving outcomes that would allow us to run at a more state average level. And I would just challenge the district to look into ways to drive more accountability with the special ed department and move kids through the process so we don't have to be an over-indexed district in special ed. And lastly, I think even the analysis that was done earlier by both Flo and Western identified some opportunities without closing schools that involve changing our catchment zones, and a small amount there, but enough to at least be worth reviewing. So with that, I'm going to pen it back to the kids to talk about their experience.
Hi. I'm born here one day. My day will be so very bad. Don't hide.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Tena. I'm a 5th grader at McKinney Elementary, and I want to tell you some things about McKinney. So first I want to start off with the music, because I really enjoy the music there. I play the flute and I'm in band, and the band teacher there is really nice, and she's also the music teacher. I also want to talk about the library. The librarian there is really nice, and she encourages us to read so much. And the teachers there, you can just connect with them so much, it's so nice. And every morning when you go there, everyone stares at you, but it's not because they're trying to make you feel uncomfortable. It's because they're curious about you. And then after like a week of being there, you eventually have everybody around there, and that's the nice thing about small schools. And if you close it, then all my 4th grade friends, my 3rd grade friends, everyone, those kids will have to go to a larger school. And I don't think you'll find that same quality there.
I'm Olive James. I'm a 6th grader this year. I went to Madison last year. And Madison is an amazing school. I went to Madison for around 8 years, K through 5 and 2 years of preschool. Throughout the time that I went to Madison, all the teachers were so amazing. They were all kind, caring, and compassionate. I remember when I was in 5th grade, and I was deciding whether I wanted to go to Reeves or apply to CSI and James. While I was making my decision, my teacher, Miss Folk, did an extremely good job of explaining all of my options and supporting me 100%. I ended up signing up for both, and I got into both. As you might assume, making a decision between 3 different amazing schools is very difficult. But the 5th grade teachers, Miss Martin and Miss Folk, always told me what they thought I should do and what they would do personally. And that was a really big help when making my decision. But Madison, since it's such a small neighborhood school, everybody knows everybody in and outside of school, which makes the learning environment just so amazing because everybody can learn and have fun while learning. Thank you.
Great. I just wanted to give a quick reminder that we've got baked goods out in the lobby at just any price donations. Please grab baked goods. And then bathroom, house item. There's a bathroom right out here on the 1st floor, and then there's 2 restrooms upstairs if you need that as well. But we are going to move into the next part of our evening. Thank you so much.
Hello. Good evening. Welcome. Thanks for showing up, folks. All right. So Jenny and I tonight are going to talk about some opportunities for increasing revenue. So exciting stuff. I know, right? So I'm Kelsey Schaefer. I am a budget professional here in the state of Olympia. I also have 7+ years working for the state-funded preschool program, ECAP, which is part of my love. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenny to introduce herself.
And I'm Jenny Borman. I'm an analyst for the state of Washington, and I have a second grader at Madison, and hopefully soon to be preschooler at Madison.
All right, so we are going to talk a little bit tonight in terms of short-term opportunities, long-term opportunities, and then we're going to do a summary for you. But first I would like to talk and frame our evening in terms of crisis and opportunity. And so in a crisis, we respond to the threat that is facing us, and sometimes it often comes from a place of fear. In opportunity, we identified something that presents us with a possibility if we act, and often it comes from a place of hope. I ask this community to think about the issues we are facing as an opportunity rather than crisis. When we operate in crisis mode, we often give into urgency and one-way thinking. It keeps us from engaging in complex problem solving and creative thinking. When we use urgency as a lens for decision making, decisions that would not get approved in a non-crisis time are more readily pushed through. Crisis relies on fear to get things done. When we operate with a lens of opportunity, it flips the script and expands possibility, and enables us to engage more readily in complex, collaborative thinking. The ideas that Jenny and I will share with you tonight come from a place of possibility and hope. With these suggested solutions, we are countering urgency and one right way thinking. And with that, in the next few minutes, we're going to share with you some short-term opportunities that we have identified. And so now, Jenny, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk through some of the research that you found on federal grants.
Okay. So there's a lot of grants that are available and that are out there. They range in price anywhere from hundreds of dollars to millions of dollars. But the grant that I want to specifically talk about tonight is the federal Impact Aid program. And what makes this grant so special and appealing is that the funds can be used for anything. They go into the general expenses, so salaries, textbooks, transportation. They're not student specific, and they bypass the state, and they basically respect the local communities and the local school districts to be able to use those funds for whatever they would like. There's 44 school districts in our state that are currently utilizing this program, including some of the neighboring school districts near Olympia. So the purpose, essentially, the Impact Aid program was created to reimburse school districts for lost revenue due to federal presence. So the federal government is exempt from paying taxes and fees. So many of the districts containing federal property are placed at a financial disadvantage. Okay. So there's actually 3 different ways for funding for this program. And so I have up here, there's 2 different types of support. And basically what it entails is a parent or guardian, only needs to be one, that is either associated with federal property or federal employment, so working or residing. So you basically could have a parent that resides on tribal lands or federal property, parents that work for the military, or parents that are employed on federal property. So the other, can you go back, Tara? Sorry about that. So the other section here behind me is essentially the same, but it's there's a separate payment that you can get for children with disabilities. And the third option is federal property within the school district boundaries. So there's basically 3 different types of funding, and our school district can take advantage of one of those, 2 of those, or all of those. and start receiving that federal aid. So how do we qualify? Basically, you need 400 students or 3% of your district enrollment. So for us, for Olympia School District, that would be 293 students. So this slide here is the Impact Aid Program, and it's showing all of the different states that are currently receiving aid, and then the specific information for Washington State. Again, I had mentioned there are 44 school districts that are currently utilizing this program. The latest information that they had on their site as far as reports shows that for fiscal year 2021, Washington has received over $62 million. And so their cycles run October 1st through September 30th of the following year. So once they've done that complete cycle, basically they will have received over $112 million. Okay, so how do we become a part of this? Basically, we need the school board to approve the parent-pupil survey in order to see if we qualify, if we have at least 293 students. And then we need to apply for the grant. We're looking at an expected revenue of $3 to $5 million. And the reason that we have a range is because of those 3 different support types that I talked about. And it's not just straightforward. So if you have a student that resides on tribal land and a different student whose parents are military, it doesn't pay necessarily the same. It's a formula that they look at for whether somebody resides or works on federal property, whether there's federal property within a school district, or whether there's a child that has a disability that has a parent that works or resides on the federal property. So that's why we have a range. Looking at school districts of similar size, that was the expected amount for this grant. So that's why we see that amount there. And so what we ask of our community is that we need your help. We need a high response rate. If we can get this survey approved by the board and we can send this survey out to all of the schools in the Olympia School District, then we need the parents to help us get this survey filled out so that we can see if we qualify and see how many federally connected students that we have. The more federally connected students, the more funding that we'll get. So again, that's what we're calling on for the OSD families and OSDForAll. And for the Olympia School District, we would need them to approve the survey, apply, and manage the grant. The good news is that we do have a person that works for the Olympia School District today that has actually done this grant work and was able to secure it for a different school district. So we don't need to hire a brand new person in order to have this grant, and they also have the experience filling out the information and applying for this grant.
Thanks, Jenny. This is some great information. Okay, so the next short-term opportunity that I'm going to talk about is getting the modeling right. So as our demographics group discussed, getting the modeling correct is foundational. Bad data is bad data. If the model was updated, it would mean $1.6 million more that would be allocated to the OSD budget. Starting off with the correct modeling is paramount to accurate data and funding projections. All right, moving into long term. So as I said before, I worked at the ECAP program at the state level, and one of the things that I think that we could do as a district and a community is to create a comprehensive, robust early learning program. And so why is early learning important? So early learning means that children who have access to early learning are less likely to repeat a grade, are more prepared academically for later grades, more likely to graduate from high school, and are higher earners in the workforce. Early learning is also equity in action. Access to effective, diverse programs breaks down structural barriers that have prevented all children, particularly children of color and children from disadvantaged families, from achieving their full potential. Early learning lays the foundation for school readiness by building the cognitive and social skills children need to do well in school and in life, which includes language, assertiveness, persistence, kindness, and self-regulation.
The benefits of high-quality programs from birth through age 5 do not end with one child, but instead extend to their entire family now and in the years to come. Okay, so Washington State, we have 2 state-funded early learning programs. We have the Early Childhood Education and Assistance Program, and we have the Transition to Kindergarten Program. ECAP was established in 1987 and will be an entitlement program in the 26-27 year, meaning that any eligible child is entitled to receive services. ECAP serves 3 and 4-year-olds for the same opportunity. The biggest barrier to ECAP entitlement is the lack of space and facilities. At a time when ECAP is steadily moving towards entitlement, the program needs more facilities in order to meet the entitlement demand. In the 21-22 year, the ECAP saturation study estimated that there were 428 eligible children in the Olympia School District that could receive services. Transition to Kindergarten is operated by the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. Transition to Kindergarten is a legislatively established and authorized program who serve children at least 4 years old by August 31st and have been identified through a screening process to be in need of additional preparation to be successful in kindergarten. Currently, there is 1 transitional kindergarten classroom in the district, and that is at Madison Elementary. So, by creating a comprehensive program, the district can realize $2.4 million in revenue increase. The district has the opportunity to see this $2 million in revenue. It assumes that 50% of the eligible children from the school district would participate in either ECAP or TK at a rate of about $12,000 per child. 50% is the participation rate we used at the state office when we created entitlement projections. With these projected eligibility numbers, OSD could have an ECAP or a TK classroom in every elementary school. This would efficiently use space that is currently unoccupied. Through a comprehensive early learning plan, the district would be able to offer both ECAP and transitional kindergarten. Blended early learning classrooms are being created across the state to serve all available early learning models. Early learning programs are best placed close to families' homes where they can easily pick up and drop off their children when needed. There are so many long-term opportunities out there, folks. So now we're going to talk about supporting bills that address structural funding issues. And so the picture that you see here behind me is a picture of community members testifying before the Senate Early Learning and K-12 Committee in support of Senate Bill 6014. And for all of you that don't yet know, 6014 raises the special education funding cap from 15% to 17.25%. And so this is a list of the legislative priorities that we've had for the year. And with 6014 and House Bill 1244, if they pass as written, we would be able to potentially realize about $2.2 million in additional revenue. So I'm going to start going a little faster because I think we have about 10 minutes. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the 2024 legislative session. I know we're not talking about uniforms, but we will just talk briefly about regionalization, because I think regionalization for the 25 legislative year is something that we need to work on as a community, working with our legislators. And so Olympia School District does currently not have regionalization, and so regionalization is a way that its purpose is to augment state funding for salaries to account for cost of living and in some districts, and these factors help districts attract and retain talent. So this is a slide just kind of showing the recommended regionalization factor percentages that were put forward from the K-12 Basic Education Compensation Advisory Committee in September of 2022. And at that time, Olympia was recommended to have a regionalization rate of 14%. This kind of gives an overall little bit view of the budget. Thank you. I was going too fast for that. I'm a slide person. The chart shows the breakdown of the OSD budget. If Olympia would receive regionalization at the recommended 14%, it would mean an increase of around $15 million, folks. So this is why we have to continue to push the regionalization that we currently don't have. Other long-term opportunity is to create a community that responds to climate change. So thinking about a green district, solar farms and geothermal technology, climate change is happening, we're all very aware of this. Creating a green district is highly attractive to families moving from other areas and could boost overall enrollment. While we don't have estimates for how much revenue this would bring in, what it does is it creates opportunity for the community and the district to work together to create sustainable practices that drive the values of students and families, as well as address climate change. Alright, so we're breaking it down into short-term and long-term. So short-term, with grants and enrollment, we've got $4.6 million. We're looking at early learning legislation for 24 and legislation for 2025, and that's 19.6, even better, right? So in conclusion, I just want folks to, just think about, grants are available. OSD needs to apply for them. Use accurate data. This is the foundation for revenue allocation as well as sustainable planning. Early learning changes the trajectory for children. Create the programming that our community needs. Participate in civic engagement. Changing legislation is paramount to addressing policy and funding issues. Moving those bills, folks. Moving those bills. Think big and not small. Olympia is a safe haven. Create a district that will attract even more families through green policy and practice. Just to say, it's not a crisis but an opportunity. It's an opportunity to create something different and more responsive in our community. But it takes time and it takes collaboration. Overall, with the suggestions that Jenny and I have brought forward, the district could realize significant revenue increases in both the short and the long term. This, however, is not just about how much revenue can be accessed. It is about the cost to the community. Keep in mind, closing Madison and McKinney will only net the district about $1.8 million in savings. Thank you.
Can we get those hands up here? At this time, I would also like to invite any other fourth graders that are in the audience who went to the Link Up performance to come join us on the stage. We're going to be singing the verses in English that you heard the singer on stage singing. And then for the rest of you, we're going to teach you the chorus so you can sing along, because music is supposed to be for everyone, not just the people on the stage. So, can you hold up your program if you have one? We have enough. We're going to be okay. Okay. So when we get to the chorus, I want you guys to sing with me. And how I'm going to teach it to you, you're going to get a little taste of elementary music class. I'm going to sing it, then you're going to sing it. Okay? Oh yeah, are you listening?
Oh yeah, are you listening?
Oh yeah, can you hear them calling?
Oh yeah, can you hear them calling?
Oh yeah, we are calling to you.
Oh yeah, we are calling to you.
The next part is, oh yeah, are you listening? Oh yeah, can you hear them calling?
Oh yeah, are you listening? Oh yeah, can you hear them calling?
Oh yeah, can you hear us?
Oh yeah, can you hear us?
You all get an A. You all get an A. Okay. Can we have the music? Can you wait for just one moment? The person who wrote this song, Jim Papoulis, wrote it because he was teaching music all across southern communities along the Mexican border. And he was asking the kids, if you had one thing you wanted to tell adults, what would it be? And they all said, listen. They said, listen to us. And so that's what this song is all about. Okay. All right, this is a big long dance break, so everybody needs to get up and dance with us. Come on. Get up, get up, get up. Start down low. Get higher. Thank you so much. The fourth graders worked really hard for that concert, and I'm really glad that they were able to do this for us.
I don't know how to follow that. I'm not gonna sing. I promise. And I probably won't dance. My name is Marissa, and I'm a parent of a kindergartner at Madison and another kindergartner on his way to Madison. I have the honor of wrapping us up this evening. I would like to start by thanking you for coming out. Thanks for being here. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for listening to our ideas. Thanks for sharing your own. We are so grateful to have every single one of you as part of our community. We can view this as a crisis, or we can step back and we can see it as an opportunity. We can see it as an opportunity to chart a new course. We can see it as an opportunity to succeed where other districts have failed. We can see this as an opportunity to meet our kids where they're at, in their neighborhoods. We can see this as an opportunity to deliver a balanced budget and keep our schools open. I'd like to start by asking everyone who's been involved with OSDForAll to please join me on stage since its inception. Come on up, guys. Even if its inception was December 14th. You're up on stage. Come on, guys. None of us have done this alone. All right. Thank you so much. Okay. I want to thank Superintendent Murphy, Directors Cliff Torn, Turtelot Palumbo. Thank you for coming up today. Thank you for coming. As you can see, by the tremendous number of people standing behind me and beside me. This is a community standing in solidarity. What started as a fractured scramble to get our individual schools off the list for closures has turned into a unified, strong, and formidable force dedicated to keeping all our schools open. And this is unique to Olympia. No other district has come together in this way. This is community engagement. We are all here tonight because we value our neighborhood schools. The impacts that school closures have on our kids, our families, our teachers, our parents, they're real. They tear apart friendships and communities, and a lot of those impacts don't show up neatly on a spreadsheet, but we feel them. We really do. I hope you walk away this evening recognizing that enrollment trends, it's not all doom and gloom. Olympia may not grow because more people are being born here. Olympia grows because people want to live here. Olympia grows because we're a safe haven from the worst impacts of climate change, and we have a great school district. And we're gonna keep it that way. I hope you took a deep breath when we shared some sensible budget solutions. $3.5 million sounds like so much money, but it's about 2% of OSD's overall budget. We found ideas and ways that we could save money without cutting programs and services that kids and families rely on, and without closing schools. I hope you felt energized and excited when we talked about near and long-term solutions to bring more money into OSD. Grants that could bring $3 to $5 million in, legislative actions that we have been fighting for this session, and long-term opportunities to bring early childhood education to our neighborhood schools. What parent doesn't love one-stop shopping for drop-off and pickup? All the kids in one place. I mean, we gotta clap for that. Early childhood education, this is an opportunity for us to welcome more students to our school district, an opportunity to give kids access to education, an opportunity to invest in our future. And it brings in about $2.4 million, so that's good too. These solutions though, they all take work. And we need to do the work to get special education funding across the finish line this legislative session. We will do that. But setting up an early childhood education program, it's gonna take work. Grants, they don't apply for themselves. Many of our ideas take effort. But we have generated a long list of solutions. We know that the superintendent and the school board can deliver a balanced budget. They can keep programs and services intact, and they can keep our neighborhood schools open. They just have to be willing to roll up their sleeves and put in the work. Superintendent Murphy, Directors Clifthorne and Turtelot-Palumbo, you and your colleagues have asked for solutions. And we have committed thousands of hours to delivering long-term solutions that avoid closures. And now I'm going to ask you to commit to us. Commit to us to review these solutions honestly, fully, and thoroughly. This isn't about checking the community engagement box. This is about collaborating to find solutions that we are excited about, finding the opportunities in this. We request the opportunity to present these solutions to the full OSD school board and the superintendent in a collaborative and public working session. Superintendent, directors, will you commit to us tonight, right now, to submit a proposal to President Seidel to invite us to a work session? Thank you for that opportunity. We're excited to continue this conversation, and we're ready to put in the work. And all of you in the audience, you're not off the hook either. Like it or not, you're part of our community now. And just like us, our solutions do not work in isolation. We need everyone to continue to support our schools right now. We need you to vote yes on next month's levy. Even if you're frustrated, especially if you're frustrated, vote yes on next month's levy. We need everyone to continue to advocate for education funding at the legislature. It is in our backyard. This is an opportunity. We can make things better for our kids here in Olympia and all kids across the state. We need you to show up at the public hearings for Madison and McKinney Elementary Schools. Our families have been going through it. We need your support right now. Show up at Madison on February 26th at 6 p.m. and McKinney February 29th at 6 p.m. Before we close tonight, I want to take a quick minute to thank everyone who made this event possible. I want to thank our presenters. When I say these folks spent thousands of hours, I'm not exaggerating. Thank you for your energy, your expertise, and your time. None of us would be here on stage or in the audience without June Ives, Hannah Middlebrook, and Miriam Hathaway. You have made us all feel so much less alone. You took a fractured community and you made us whole and strong, and we are so grateful. Hannah and Miriam, thank you for your work. You pulled off an amazing event, and it's truly magical to be in this space together. Most importantly, though, I want to thank our students. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for showing up. You are our inspiration. You're why we're here. Thank you. And thanks to all of you in the audience. I hope that you leave this evening feeling a little bit lighter than when you walked in. Maybe your perspective has shifted just a little bit. Maybe you're realizing that you are part of an amazing community. Thanks again for coming out tonight. Check out our posters, contribute your ideas. There's baked goods in the lobby. The donations go to Madison and McKinney PTOs, PTAs, PT, SD, I don't know. All right, thanks for coming out, everyone. Have a great evening.